I'm Faye Mack. I'm the Advocacy and Education Director here at Hunger Free Vermont and part of the team working on the Universal School Meals campaign. And I'm so excited to see so many names that I know and that I don't know on this call tonight. It's great to see our coalition continuing to grow and expand across the state. And so I'm going to share my screen and just talk for a couple of minutes about what we're actually talking about when we're talking about this bill that's in the legislature. And one moment, here we go. All right, so our goal for this year is to make universal school meals permanent in the state of Vermont. I think, as most of you likely know, schools in Vermont have been providing universal school meals, although a slightly different model than the permanent model since the start of the pandemic in March of 2020. And that's a long time, right? We're into the third school year where no kid has had to pay for school meals and their family have not had to provide their income information and fill out forms, and kids haven't had to stand in different lunch lines for their school breakfast and lunch. And 3 school years is a pretty long time to make a habit, right? And so we really want to not go back. We can build from this and continue to make universal school meals permanent. And so that's what we're working on. And so this is what we're proposing and what the legislature is talking about. As I said, the goal is to make universal school meals where no child has to, or their family have to pay for a school breakfast or lunch, regardless of their household's income. We want to make that permanent in all schools in Vermont. And as part of doing that, we would require and support schools in the work that they need to do to maximize participation, to inspire and entice every kid to eat a school breakfast and a school lunch, and to also maximize the federal funding that's available for the program. The federal government pays for much of this program, and there are a lot of best practices that organizations like Hunger for Vermont and the School Nutrition Association of Vermont and Vermont Feed can all be helping schools with to maximize that participation and the federal funding. However, the federal funding isn't going to cover the whole bill to be able to pay for all of the kids to be able to eat through the universal school meals model. There will still be a portion of the cost that needs to be covered. And what we are proposing and what the legislature is considering is that that portion be covered collectively by all of us in Vermont through the education fund. So that way we're not asking individual towns and individual school budgets to try to shoulder this expense and all the other expenses that they're trying to pay for on their own. That this is a collective piece of the way that we educate our children. The other major piece of this is that we would, in part of this, in tandem with this, launch the Universal Income Declaration form, which is an alternative form to the school meal application. Right now, schools in the state use the school meal application as a way to gather really important information about households and their income levels to qualify for a whole host of different programs that are partly nutrition related and others that have nothing to do with school meal programs. And that information is really important, but it doesn't need to be tied to the school meal application, which has a lot of stigma associated with it and goes away, thankfully, when we enter into universal school meals. So we have the opportunity to introduce a much better, more equitable and simple form that all families will fill out, whether or not they're trying to get a school meal program or a school meal for their child. And that's it. It's actually a pretty short list of what I just explained, and I rolled through it really quickly. And I'm happy to go back when we get into questions, but it's actually pretty simple. The federal government has a program set up, and the state is able to take advantage of it. And as Senator Pearson said, we have to figure out how to pay for it. But that's about it. And schools are already doing this and can continue doing this if we're able to pass this bill. Now, I'm talking just a little bit about school breakfast and lunch. I skipped a slide. So let me tell you a little bit about where we are, and then I'll tell you a little bit about the bigger picture. So as Senator Pearson mentioned, the Senate did a lot of work on this last year, and they passed a bill, it's S-100, out of the Senate and sent it over to the House. And as he also mentioned, that bill got a little bit pared back in order to pass the Senate. So the bill that passed the Senate is for universal school breakfast, and it doesn't include lunch at this point. But we want to bring that back to school breakfast and lunch. And we're pretty confident that we have the support and excitement needed in the State House in order to do that. The bill is in the House Education Committee right now, and they actually spent a pretty fair amount of time talking about it and hearing from many of you on this call and others from across the state about the bill last year, and just simply ran out of time when the legislative session ended to keep working on it. So they're ready to pick it back up and start working on it again. So we'll be picking it back up with them right in House Education, working to bring breakfast and lunch into the bill so that the bill is full universal school meals, and getting it through the House and back over to the Senate. So that's the process, and it's has many more twists and turns than what I just laid out, but that's where we're starting out right now in January. And as Senator Pearson mentioned, we're going to need all of you to help in order to get through this and get this through the entire House and back over into the Senate. And so after we hear from everyone else, Teddy will take a couple of moments to talk about how we can all do that and how we can collectively make this happen. So with that, I want to just share a little bit about the bigger picture, right? So we're talking today about universal school meals, which is really just one piece of the entire system of the school meal program and how we feed our kids in school and all the different components of it. The vision that we're working towards is Farm Fresh school meals for all. And that includes universal school meals, and it also includes farm to school and early childhood programs and local purchasing support for schools wanting to buy directly from farmers and producers. And so I share this to share the context in which we're all working, and all of these pieces we're working on together to help create a really vibrant school meal program that inspires kids to eat, that supports school nutrition professionals and make sure that they have the funding that they need to run their programs, and allows them to buy more food directly from Vermont farmers and producers. And so all of these come together and work together, and universal school meals is one of the key levers in this to help this virtuous cycle that supports farmers, schools, kids, and nutrition all together. I spoke really quickly because I want to make sure we have so much of our time available for both Tristan and Scott to speak tonight. What I didn't talk about today is why universal school meals and why now is the time to get that done. And that's because I think that Scott and Tristan can speak much more eloquently about that than I can. And so I'm going to turn it over to Scott, who is the school nutrition director at Essex Westford Schools District, and is also the president of the School Nutrition Association of Vermont.